We've always loved pumpkin pie, and we thought it would be just terrific to make it in the SunOven. We did that today, and it worked. I'm going to give you two recipes because I made actually the second one. Here's a pretty classic one. Something along these lines normally appears on the can of pumpkin that you buy from the store. We've always liked it quite well, except found it too sweet. So I usually have greatly reduced the sugar and sometimes use brown sugar. This is a classic recipe that always works and would certainly work in the SunOven. But here's what I did today. For medical reasons, our family now needs to avoid cow's milk and sugar. So I replaced all of the sugar with 1 teaspoon of monk fruit and used an equal amount that the recipe calls for of milk, but it's almond milk. Monk fruit is a plant extract that tastes sweet, at least to most people. The one I buy is a pure monk fruit powder. No other sweeteners involved, but sometimes there are forms available that are mixed with other sweeteners. It's incredibly concentrated. I only used 1 teaspoon to replace all of the sugar. I don't like purchased crust at all, so here's the recipe that I've been using for years to make crust. This crust is tasty, but it can't be rolled out and placed in the pan. You have to make it in the pan. So already in the pan are the salt, the flour, and the oil. And by the way, though I prefer canola, you can certainly use other kinds of oil. Blend with a fork until the texture is even, and then add water little by little and blend some more. The goal is to add just enough water that you can form a lump that can be smoothly spread out and rolled out right in the pan. It's not there yet. We do need more water, and I'll keep working on it. When you do have something that will form into a lump of dough, start spreading it out in the pan. Fingers work, and I usually start out with fingers. And a little roller tool like this is very helpful once you have it spread out so it basically covers the bottom of the pan. This will do a neater, more even job. And if it comes apart, as mine just did, just push it back together and roll some more. Roll until the bottom is smooth and then right up to the edge of the pan. But don't worry yet about neatening the edges. We'll do that after we see how full the pie plate gets. Do bring all the edges up to a pretty even height around the pan. When that's finished, we'll set the crust aside and mix up the pie. The pumpkin's already in the bowl. Here I'm adding a little bit of salt. I prefer to grind it fresh and just estimate. Add the spices. I was out of a couple of them. I already have allspice and ginger in the pan, and I'm adding the cinnamon now, and we're always real generous compared to whatever the real recipe says. We like ours spicy. Here comes the 1 cup of almond milk and the 2 eggs. They're already beaten, so you're just seeing beaten eggs get poured in. And now just blend thoroughly. This is a pretty classic, basic custard pie type recipe. It's just got the addition of pumpkin in it. I know other people use a mixer for this, but I've always done fine with a fork. And I added the monk fruit last. There's the teaspoon of monk fruit, and in it goes. It blended in very easily. It's nice and smooth and ready to go in the crust, I believe. And in it goes. It's quite thick, but it pours just fine. Next, this is when I neaten up the top edge of the crust. It's important not only for looks. I don't want it extending too far above the pie itself, and that's why it's getting pushed down, but also the thin spots have a tendency to burn and also make it really hard to serve the pie. They're real crumbly. So it's unceremonious, but just manually crimp it down so that it's near the pie, though above it, and neat. And into the SunOven it goes. The oven was 350 degrees when we put it in. It dropped from opening it, of course, and dropped a little bit more from the steam buildup, the fact that we forgot to rotate it, and the fact that because you can't see very well, every time you want to check on it, you have to open the door again. All in all, it took 2 hours, and I believe the temperature stayed 275 to 300 most of that time. Because I had made dramatic substitutions in the recipe, I wasn't absolutely positive it would gel. Here's where I touched it with my fingertip just to make sure. For those who are new to pumpkin pie making, here's another sign that it really has finished. The formation of those cracks. But they get much more dramatic as the pie cools. There was only the faintest hint of it while it was still in the oven. The sugarless, milkless recipe did work, but is it any good? Oh, yes, it is. That is simply delicious. For those who need to count carbs, I did count them up by taking net carbs, which means the total number minus the amount of fiber, based on the label information on the ingredients I used. This is what I got. The entire pie has 109 carbs, an eighth of it, which is a pretty classic serving, 13.6. If it's important to you to know, please do add up your own ingredients. My particular almond milk has a net carb rating of 0, but there are some that are sweetened or have other differences, and they might add some carbs. I did not worry about any tiny amounts that might be contained in the spices. They were omitted from the list.